With movies like Sonic the Hedgehog and shows like The Last of Us and Halo, it's easy to forget that there once was a time where big screen video game adaptations weren't worth waiting for. One 1995 film took the button-mashing, techno-rocking, plotless attitude all the way to the bank, though, proving one thing. We clearly had much lower expectations in the 90s. Will time look fondly upon this tournament of chumpions? Find out as we attempt to prove to you that Mortal Kombat is not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies. And I'm going to tell you right now, you better get your button mashing and your glow sticks ready to go because we are here for an EDM good time because we're talking 1995's Mortal Kombat. And here to join me to go down, amnesia lane with this movie, joining the show for the first time, Ruben Chavez is here. Ruben, how you doing, man?
I'm great, and honestly, I'm ready to button mash. I think A and B, this fits perfectly. Those are the buttons you have to mash to play Mortal Kombat, so I'm ready to talk about this. If not iconic film, infamous film.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I'm glad the movie went in a slightly different direction than the video game, at least the way I remember the video game, because the main character would be dying every 10 seconds. That would be my version of the video game turned into a movie.
It would make for a much more frustrating watch if you had to press start or put in another token every couple minutes.
How come Liu Kang keeps respawning? Come on. But let me ask you this.
There's no consequences in this world.
But let me ask you this. When we were talking about which movie to do, this is the one that you pitched. So what is it about Mortal Kombat that made you want to defend it?
Well, I have a lot of love for the game franchise. Like, as young as I am, I still, back home in Guatemala where I'm from, they still had arcades and arcade machines. So when I went back there for the first time, I played Mortal Kombat in the old arcade towers. So when I was a kid, I watched this movie a lot. And when you're a kid, you don't understand what good and bad is when it comes to film. You're just like, oh, I know these characters. There's fight scenes. This guy shoots ice out of his hand. So I really love the movie. I think I've watched it more times than anybody should be willing to admit, even in court. And the song itself, I think, is worth talking. Like, I think even just the song gives this movie half of its rating, like the theme tune.
I love the fact that you're sitting there saying, I probably watched this more times than should be legally allowed. So it kind of feels like this is less a podcast and more an intervention for you. But
yeah, no, honestly, I need you to convince me to stop watching this horrible movie.
There are other movies, Ruben. You can watch something else. We are way past 1995. You can watch other movies.
It's not sinking in yet.
Of which, to anyone right now listening, all of a sudden when you realize that we're recording this in 2023, which means that this movie is 28 years old.
And it definitely looks like it in some parts.
In some places, yes. But before we get into the minutia of this film, it is time to take 1995's Mortal Kombat and trailerize it.
You know the song. You know the game. Which means you know more about this film than the characters in the actual movie. Enter the world of Mortal Kombat. A contest where people train their whole lives for, and others just show up for reasons. With the fate of the world at stake, 3 contestants find themselves as the last line of defense against the evil Outworld Emperor, whose minion, Shang Tsung, is here to clearly just get laid. I mean, forget the world. He's looking for a good time with Veronica Vaughn. Together, our 3 heroes will battle faceless hordes, bad CGI, rubber animatronic monsters, and the ceaseless musings of a guy who willfully starred in Highlander 2. It's Mortal Kombat, rated PG-13 for poorly rendered graphics.
That was good.
I can't not pick on Highlander 2. It's just it needs to be pointed out that movie sucked more than most other movies have sucked in their entire lifetime. So I'm sorry, Christopher Lambert. I have to put it out there. But
absolutely.
This film stars Christopher Lambert, Robin Shou, Lyndon Ashby, Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, Bridget Wilson, Talissa Soto, and Trevor Goddard. However, there is quite the almost starring list in this one here. You know, as you go through, you're like, holy crap, I can see some of these, and some of them I just can't. Almost starring in the role of Johnny Cage, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, see, that would make sense because the character Johnny Cage is based off of him anyways in the video game, and I think they wanted to get him, but I think he chose Street Fighter if I remember correctly.
He, for whatever reason, went with Street Fighter, and if you've seen Street Fighter, you know that he chose poorly. But,
yeah, it's funny because we have a lot to say negative about this movie, but that's not even a lateral move. He definitely went down. This wouldn't have been a great choice, but he definitely made the wrong one.
Yeah, when you realize that he's wearing the camo uniforms that were literally taken from Surf Ninjas that was like 2 years prior. Jean-Claude Van Damme. But also apparently under consideration for that role were Gary Daniels, Tom Cruise, and Johnny Depp. And I'm sorry, I can't see any of those three in this role. I just can't.
No, I agree. I feel like Tom Cruise is the only one that would kind of make sense because Johnny Cage is a Hollywood actor that kind of is too cool for school. And I guess if you watch Jerry Maguire and all, like, Tom Cruise is what a Hollywood star looks like in a lot of people's heads. But I agree. I don't think he would have been good in it.
Yeah, no.
It's the only one that makes sense, but I don't think so.
Yeah. In the role of Sonya Blade, as played by Bridget Wilson, now Bridget Wilson Sampras, it was originally supposed to be Cameron Diaz. And she was cast, but apparently she broke her wrist during training. Now, Bridget Wilson had actually walked away from the casting process because it was taking too long, so she went to go do Billy Madison. By the time Cameron Diaz broke her wrist, Billy Madison had wrapped, so she was able to do this. I don't know if I can picture Cameron Diaz in this role.
I agree, and I also think I don't know. I feel like this movie doesn't use Sonya Blade's character as well as it could have, so it would have been a shame for someone as great as Cameron Diaz to be wasted on it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Well, the funny thing is, we're talking 1995 Cameron Diaz here. So, I can't remember the chronology of when The Mask came out. So, but it's not like we're talking Charlie's Angels Cameron Diaz. We're talking like a younger in her career Cameron Diaz, but also apparently under consideration were Christina Applegate, which I can kind of see, Sharon Stone, no, and Dina Meyer. This is the one that intrigues me. And if you're not as familiar with Dina Meyer as you may should be, go find the old Birds of Prey TV series. She actually played Barbara Gordon / the Oracle in that TV series. I think Dina Meyer would have been phenomenal in this role.
I'm not as familiar with her, but I know she's in Starship Troopers, right? She plays Dizzy, like the one of the people in that, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think you're right. I think she would have been great. I think out of the other alternative castings, I think she would be the one. She'd be the pick to make it, and she might have. I think the performance was great by the actors that they chose ultimately, but I would have really loved to see the version with her in it as opposed to what we got.
Now, in the role of Liu Kang, this has quite the list here. Apparently, under consideration for this role was Jason Scott Lee, who played Bruce Lee in Dragon: The Bruce Lee Story, Russell Wong from Romeo Must Die in New Jack City, Dustin Nguyen, who played Officer Loki in 21 Jump Street, Keith Cook, who played Reptile in the film in Mortal Kombat, so he actually at least got a role in it, and Philip Rhee, who played Tommy Lee in the Best of the Best series. They apparently auditioned for it, and Ernie Reyes Jr. was also considered for the role. Again, this is nothing against the actual cast. I think Jason Scott Lee would have been phenomenal in this role.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it's one of those things where you want to be respectful of the people that got cast. And I actually think the actor that did play Liu Kang did a really solid job. But yeah, I agree. Seeing Lee's take on it, and especially like having he played Bruce Lee, and Liu Kang is based on Bruce Lee, and this movie shares a lot of similarities with Enter the Dragon. So I think it would have fit. I think he would have done really good.
Well, when you consider that it was almost directed by Rob Cohen, who did direct Dragon the Bruce Lee story, it kind of makes sense. Dragon to me is an underrated film. I have always loved watching that whenever it's on TV. I remember when it first came out and it was on like the movie channels. I watched it like incessantly. It's say what you will about the film, but it's actually pretty good. And Jason Scott Lee, I think, was very good as Bruce Lee. In the role of Raiden, as played by Christopher Lambert, apparently his Highlander co-star Sean Connery turned the role down so he could go play golf. And that he didn't want to do an action movie either, but basically turned it down to go play golf. I don't see Sean Connery in this role at all.
And as we know, there can only be one, so I guess.
Also,
I had to make it.
Go listen to There Can Only Be One, the podcast. Yeah, it's got a great host.
There you go. It's 2 for 1. 2 for 1. That's
exactly
synchronicity.
I gotta get the cheap pop where I can here. It's all good.
Exactly. No, I don't think Sean Connery would have been good at all.
Like, no, just no. Apparently also under consideration for the role, and this is completely out of left field, Danny Glover.
I did see that. And again, the way that Christopher Lambert chose to interpret Raiden as this like his dry sarcasticness and kind of the humor, I could see Danny Glover's take on it as like a god who's kind of done with it all. Like he wants to retire, whatever that looks like for a god. He's like, I'm way too old to protect Earthrealm anymore, but I don't know if there's a Mel Gibson equivalent in this movie.
Probably not. No, unless you put Mel Gibson as Johnny Cage, but then you would just get all the Lethal Weapon jokes in there.
Yeah. As
Princess Katana, apparently Mariska Hargitay actually auditioned for the role. Obviously, she didn't get it. It went to Talisa Soto. As Jax, which is a very small role in this film, Sonya Blade's partner when they're kind of staking out the boat looking for Kano, Michael Jai White was asked but chose to do Tyson instead. Of course, Michael Jai White from Spawn fame, or infamy as the case may be, however you want to look at that film. But apparently Steve James, who played Kung Fu Joe in I'm Gonna Get You Sucker and Baseball Fury in The Warriors, was cast, but he unfortunately passed away before production started. It's a very small role, but those are big names for a small role.
Yeah, but I feel like obviously Hollywood studios always like to picture the best case scenario, and the sequel was eventually made that thankfully we're not talking about, but I feel like they always knew that there was going to be a number 2 potentially, and that Jax might have a bigger role, so maybe they wanted a bigger part. I think Michael Jai White would have been a great cast. I mean, he eventually did play Jax in like 2011 for the more gritty reboot of Mortal Kombat that was like a web series, so he got there in a roundabout way, but I think
eventually,
I think it would have been great. Yeah, he took his time with it.
Now, this is going to be like a deep cut here, but if you take a look at the early, introductions of the main characters of the movie, Johnny Cage is filming this film, and there's a director that is trying to get him to go back on set. That director apparently was supposed to be Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
According to IMDb, Steven Spielberg is actually a fan of the game. So schedules just couldn't coordinate, but it was supposed to apparently, according to IMDb, be Steven Spielberg in that chair. I did not picture Steven Spielberg as a Mortal Kombat fan, but that would have been completely at a left. This film clearly had bigger aspirations than it was, it ended up being.
Yeah, its eyes were a little bigger than its stomach, it seems. Because how weird would it be if Steven Spielberg made a cameo in Mortal Kombat's 1995, a movie that largely gets forgotten, and you're just like, oh yeah, Steven Spielberg, this is what he chose. He's a big fan of this game specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. strange.
The film was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. This is actually only his second film. He eventually went on to go direct Event Horizon, Soldier, Alien vs. Predator, Pompeii, and 4 Resident Evil films. Now, I'm not going to talk about Pompeii, because Pompeii is a volcanic piece of ash. But yeah, I went there.
It's good.
But I need to shout out Soldier here, because that to me is a bit of an unheralded gem. It almost feels like a spiritual sequel to Blade Runner before Blade Runner 2049 came out, because it does feel like it would fit into that world. And I mean, Event Horizon, if you're in the right mindset before you go into the film and you know what you're walking into, because I've been duped by Event Horizon before, and it took me a couple watches to get myself there. I mean, that it's not a bad filmography for a director, but I mean,
No.
if this is your second film, that's stepping up pretty good.
Yeah, I think this is a big step up considering his career. But I'm with you. Like, I think he has a solid filmography, and I mean, Soldier, I agree, is an unheralded classic. Funny enough, Jason Scott Lee's in that, so maybe he liked enough of what he saw in the audition process. Like, I got another movie for you. But yeah, it's definitely a big step up, and I think, again, given what video game adaptations are, he did as well as he could. From what I read on IMDb and other things, like, he was also kind of like learning on the fly because he'd never directed an action movie before.
Mm-hmm.
So he got a lot of feedback and input from like the characters, specifically the
For
actor
Robin
who
Shue,
played
yeah.
Kang. Yeah, Robin Shue, because he'd been acting in Hong Kong and doing stunts, so helped him out a little. But learning on the job, fun.
Which actually, I have to give credit where credit is due to Paul W.S. Anderson here. For someone to be sitting in the director's chair and have the humility to sit there and listen to actors on the set give him, pointers and props and whatnot, that speaks to a very open mind process in directing that I think a lot of sets and a lot of movies would actually benefit from. So, kudos to Paul W.S. Anderson for having an open mind. We mentioned Rob Cohen as almost directing here. Steve Barron, who directed 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Coneheads, apparently was also considered. That would have been very interesting. And I love Coneheads. Coneheads is fun. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for the win.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe they could have gotten Vanilla Ice to do a song for this one too.
Oh, no. No. Now, apparently, the original screenplay definitely would have been an R-rated film, because we are talking Mortal Kombat here. We're talking, 8-bit, 16-bit, blood and guts and gore. But apparently New Line's contract stipulated that it needed to be PG-13. I'm not going to lie. I don't hate that. As much as we would love a Mortal Kombat R-rated film, and we eventually got a Mortal Kombat R-rated film, 1995, it needed to be PG-13. Do you think it would have done as well as it did were it R-rated?
No, and I thought about that too, because obviously watching it as I've gotten older and stuff, a part of you is like, oh, the games are so violent. Part of what you like about the games, even as a kid, is the fake little blood and animations. But at the time, like, again, most of the fans of these games were kids, and they wouldn't have been able to get their parents to take them to an R-rated movie, much less be allowed in it. Like, PG-13 made sense. I don't think it would have done as well. And it's hard to imagine, especially post Deadpool and all these other R-rated movies that are doing well. But this wasn't a time where an R-rated movie was going to break the box office, especially one based on a video game franchise that largely kids are playing. So they made the right choice, as much as sometimes the studios can get it wrong. An R rating probably would have killed this film.
Yeah. And when you take a look at the box office, clearly they made the right choice. This film, according to IMDb, had a budget of $18 million and had a domestic gross of $70.5 million and a worldwide gross of $122 million. According to Box Office Mojo, the week it was released, so that's the August 18th, 1995 weekend, oh God, I'm old, this film literally destroyed everything in its wake, in its opening weekend, because it debuted at number 1 with $23 million. The next closest film was Dangerous Minds at $10 million at number 2. So clearly people wanted to go see this. By the way, the only other debuting film in the top 10 that weekend, debuting at number 9, was The Babysitter's Club.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's not a very good weekend for opening, but I mean, let's be honest. When a film with the popularity of Mortal Kombat, at least as far as the video game goes, says we're going to open on this weekend, everyone just get out of the way. It's going to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that it dominated considering of what it went up against, but the studio played it smart. It seems like they nailed every decision they possibly could to maximize their profit. Like, because Mortal Kombat back then especially, hot button issue with the games and everything, so
yeah.
Smart.
Now, however, the critics. Oh, the critics.
Oh, those critics.
Over at Metacritic, this film has a Metascore of 60, and over on Rotten Tomatoes has an audience score of only 57%, which actually surprises me. And the critic score, the tomatometer, is at 45%. Now, I want to put this into perspective here, okay? We're talking Mortal Kombat, and there's a few movies out there, okay? The 2021 reboot, the R-rated one, has a tomatometer of 54%. So even that qualifies. You mentioned Mortal Kombat Annihilation earlier. That film has a 4% tomatometer.
Again, feels high somehow still. Like
those are like pity points right there at that point.
Yeah, they're just like, we got to get it up past like 0.5 or whatever it was at. We'll get it to 4.
Exactly. Somewhere there's a green screen artist crying. Let's give him a few pity points there. But let's put this into perspective here, because it's not like the franchise doesn't have its fans and the franchise can work. There was a 2020 animated movie called Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge. It has a 90% tomatometer. This leads me to draw direct comparisons to the DC EU versus the DC animated universe. So, speaking to you, a Mortal Kombat fan, just not Annihilation, because no one was a fan of that one, is this the kind of property that you would rather see in an animated feature film because of what you can do with the animation?
I think it naturally suits that better because, again, like, it's a ridiculous world, and it's like to do it in live action, you need all these special effects and stuff that are hard to pull off. And I do think it just fits. The world fits better in animation. I think I would prefer to see it there. Because even with the new, it surprises me that the new one got a higher rating by the critics. I wonder what the audience score is at, but because the new one kind of does a reverse of this, where it's less faithful to the games, but more gory. So in that way, it's faithful to the games. But yeah, I think largely, like some DC fans might say, like the animated movies kind of hit better and are more well done because they can just do more and push the limits of this world and explore it in a way that maybe you can't do in real life. Yeah, and I mean, I have gone on multiple podcasts, whether they be my own or as a guest, and sung the praises of the DC animated universe, especially leading up to Justice League Apocalypse War. They did it so well, whereas the DCEU was just thanks for coming out and trying. Kudos to them for finding a niche for the Mortal Kombat fans. But let's get to the breakdown of this film and find out why this film is actually a lot better than the critic score that it's been given. We're going to start. Let's do it.
Yeah, we're going to start with Robin Shou, who plays Liu Kang. How was Liu Kang for you?
Again, I think as an actor, it's kind of lacking. He's clearly not like a top tier actor, but I think he brought what he needed to do to the role in an action sense, like his body and his physique and the way that he was able to use it in the fight scenes. And because he had a hand in those fight scenes, I think he executed everything really well. And if you take his contributions to the project as a whole, I don't think this film has a cohesive fight language if it's not for him. So I think he did great as a fighter, not as an actor. If like the cutscenes were bad, but when he was doing the punches and the kicks, A plus, I guess. Like he was solid. Like he gets a passing grade overall because again, the bicycle kick looked great and all those stuff. He made it look good and he made it look believable, which I think is tough to do.
I can't believe you just called the dialogue in between fight scenes a cutscene because it kind of it's kind of appropriate in this case. Like, skip, fight, begin. But you have to give him credit because he was also one of the fight coordinators for this. So big props to him. I don't hate him in this role. I think he did a very good job for what he was given. I need to single out Kevin Droney here. Kevin Droney is the guy who wrote this script. Okay. This is the second last film he ever wrote, by the way. The last film Kevin Droney ever wrote was another video game adaptation, Wing Commander. Yeah. Wow. This was also his first theatrical release as a writer. So, like clearly if you're just taking cutscene dialogue from these video games and trying to turn it into a script, you might want to write a little bit better because let's be honest, cutscenes for 1995, and that era video games weren't exactly that's the word I'm looking for here, well thought out. There's a reason I think why video game adaptations today are better because the source material got better. The Last of Us is a phenomenal TV show, but that's because the game itself was written very well. I'm still waiting for the day when we get the, there are some games that need to be turned into movies, and they will be, and they'll be good because the game itself is that good and it's well written. No one was, popping quarters into an arcade cabinet, of 1995 Mortal Kombat because they wanted the dialogue. That's like saying you bought Playboy for the articles. You went there to go hit buttons on the console. But I will give Robin Shou, I will give Robin Shou credit, right, for the dialogue that he's given. And full credit to some of these actors for saying some of these lines that no one would ever say in their entire life with conviction. But he did. He put in a full-hearted effort. I as much as I think Jason Scott Lee would be good in the role, I don't hate Robin Shou. This isn't a recast for me. He's good.
I agree. I don't think it needs to be recast. And he did the best with what he was given. I think it's like you're saying, like, we live in a world, and maybe some people listen to this podcast who are younger might not picture a world where the dialogue doesn't matter and you actually get the story from the manual that comes with the game, or you just like look at what's on screen and play through it. But yeah, like there was no Last of Us in 1995. Right?
Oh God, no.
There was nothing that had that gravitas, and people weren't trying to bring these like big cinematic almost universes in your gaming console. The consoles couldn't handle it for the first part, and there just wasn't, the video game industry just wasn't there yet, especially with all like the bubbles that had burst and like the lead up, and it's crazy to think that he does as good as you can do with the dialogue that he was given. Absolutely, especially 90s cheesy action movie dialogue and some of the stuff that he had to say full earnestly believing it, and he delivers it very well. I agree. I would not recast Robin. I think he did everything he could possibly be asked to do.
Yeah. I mean, if this game had the dialogue and scripting component of a game like Life is Strange, then you're going to have a much better movie. But if you're cribbing your stuff from 1995 cutscenes, crib better. Let's move on to Bridget Wilson Sampras, who of course played Sonya Blade. We can take away the weak dialogue here, but I got issue. And again, it's not with Bridget Wilson. I actually think she was perfect for the role because we know she did her own stunts. We know she did that with Last Action Hero. We know she's a physically fit actress in that time. But did you have to turn her into a 1980s hair metal video vixen at the end of this? You took a strong character, then you tied her up to a bunch of poles, teased her hair, and put her in a skimpy outfit. Not that her first outfit wasn't skimpy to begin with, but you took away what made Sonya Blade good and strong and did that to her.
It definitely undercuts her character. And again, it's one of those things where sometimes adaptations can get caught in doing too much fan service, because that's a nod to the second game where she appears as a prisoner in the Shang Tsung level. And it feels unnecessary because it is unnecessary. She is a strong character and she doesn't need to be reduced to that. I agree. I think her performance was strong. Again, like dialogue aside, that's not her choice, but she's clearly, like you said, a strong actress, did her own stunts. For that to kind of be a throw in at the end of the movie, clearly just to like get people to ogle her, felt like undercutting a character that they'd done a pretty good job developing, like through her fight scenes and through just her attitude of being tough and like being able to take care of herself. Her first lines in the movie are like, I only trust one person, and that's me. And they kind of shied away from that at the end with that scene, I think.
Yeah. I mean, let me put this out there, okay? I get that they damseled her for the end, so they have this big, Liu Kang's going to come and save the day and Johnny Cage is going to be there for her. No, like they made a choice at one point early on in the movie. Apparently in the original script, when she's fighting with Kano and, she kills him, and there's her revenge. There's her moment. Apparently in the original script, she wasn't supposed to kill him. She was supposed to like look at Shang Tsung and go like, I can't be controlled, when he's like, finish him. No, she's there to kill him. She killed him, right? Like that. Don't take away her mission in some kind of act of defiance. She was there for one sole purpose, that was to kill Kano. Problem solved. Plus, also, if you put her in like with the teased hair and all that to make her look hot, because 1995 reasons, I'm sorry, she looked better when she was kicking ass.
Absolutely.
Kick ass Sonya Blade hotter than damsel Sonya Blade. Just gonna put that out there.
Yeah.
They did her dirty on that one.
I agree. That you can't even call that a hot take. That's the correct take. They did her dirty, and she was much hotter when she was the special forces badass who went and completed her mission. She got it done quicker than any of the guys did. She got there, did her thing, and left. Sure, she should have left. She could have just gone back on the boat and waited. I'm cool, guys. You guys finish up your thing. I took care of business. So yeah, I agree. They let her down.
Yeah. I mean, you actually had a strong action movie female protagonist, and then you damseled her. Bad movie. Bad choice for the movie. Let's move on to Lyndon Ashby, who of course played Johnny Cage. How was he for you?
I liked him a lot. And maybe that's controversial, but I thought because Johnny Cage is such a jerk and you want to hate him, but he has a bit of a charm to him that I thought that he brought to the role. I thought that Ashby did a really good job personifying that character. Because you're not supposed to like Johnny Cage, but you do, because he's a jerk and he's cool and he has the sunglasses. But I really enjoyed his take on it.
So here's normally when you have someone come in to be quote unquote Captain Quips, which he kind of is in this case, they're the most ineffectual character, right? They're along for the ride. They're there for comedic effect. Not him though, right? Yeah, he's got the quips, he's got the comedic relief, but he's also just as effective. Admittedly, sometimes in a bit more of a comedic way, joke about cock punching Johnny here, but he did it and it worked. But it's not like he was, he didn't know how to fight, right? He was there to prove himself. He was there to prove to the world that he was actually a good fighter and he's not the fake that people are claiming him to be. So he's got reason to be there. Maybe not the save the world kind of reason, but he's still there regardless. But he is, he brings a levity to the situation. He makes the cutscenes better, if we're going to call, the actual dialogue moments cutscenes, but he's effective. And you got to love him for that. Like the other thing too, apparently Paul W.S. Anderson encouraged a little bit of ad-libbing in these scenes, probably because the script wasn't that great to begin with. But if that's the case, then you're seeing some of these, these actors who can improv on the fly, add a little bit of flavor to it. I think he added the right amount of flavor. It does need a little bit of levity at points.
Yeah, and I think him specifically and Lambert add that flavor, keep the audience engaged, and make the cutscene scenes more bearable. His interactions with Sonya and with Liu Kang are funny, and he delivers his lines in a even when he's given a straight line that's a joke, like you get that it's a joke. He's really clever and quippy, and like you said, an effectual member of the team. Like he affects the progress of the story. He's not just there for the joke. So I thought he did really good at bringing his personality to the character, and you believe that he's the type of person to sign his own autograph after killing somebody and putting it in the fire. And I think that it takes a talent to be able to embody the character and come up with those lines on the fly to help a script that definitely needed it. So he did great. I think that his quips were on point and definitely needed.
Okay, we have to talk about Christopher Lambert now, who played Raiden. Now, so far, I've been fine with the casting. So far.
This is the one. This is the one.
This is where I have to sit here and say, the were you thinking, movie? Seriously. Like, I get he's the Highlander, right? It's fine. He can do action movies. Could you not find someone who doesn't feel like they're faking an accent for Raiden? But, I mean, did it feel odd for you with him in this role?
It's definitely, I feel like it's grown on me because of my love for the movie, but it is a weird fit for a host of reasons. But yeah, the accent's kind of like it's so overdone. Like it's so painful to listen to at times. But I do think in a weird way, his little dry, sarcastic humor and like a god that like pretends not to care but does care, obviously, when he comes to the defense of like the fighters in the boat, and when he comes and scolds them for fighting early and trying to guide them in the right direction. He's like an unwilling mentor, which obviously he seemed perfectly capable of doing. I think it's a weird fit. I definitely think if you were gonna recast one role of the core, and if you include Shang Tsung and Kano in the core characters that matter, he's the only one that would be up for a recast. Because I do think someone could have brought more of a actual god feel. Like it doesn't feel like he's the protector of Earth as much as he is, again, just like a jokester who's here to like, I don't really care what happens to you guys because I'm gonna do my little accent and make my little jokes and turn into lightning anytime I want to get out of a conversation. So it's an odd fit, especially with everybody else kind of like, I would say, more embodying their character. Christopher Lambert kind of feels like he was hanging out.
Yeah. I mean, I do appreciate them wanting to shoehorn in a bit of a bigger name. And Christopher Lambert is still a big name in 1995. Like, I get it. He's a prestige casting, right? He's a name on the poster that you sit there and go, oh, hey, Highlander's in this. It's all good, right? It could have been better. I don't think it needed a prestige casting. Like, but if you were going to, I'm going to draw two names here, and coincidentally, they're actually both from the same movie as a potentially a better Raiden. The first one is David Carradine, who of course played Bill in Kill Bill Volume 2. I think what he did as Bill in that movie would have worked better as Raiden. But to the same token as well, Gordon Liu, who played Pai Mei in Kill Bill Volume 2, as the master at the top of the mountain who trains Uma Thurman in order for her to be able to seek her revenge. Either one of those castings would have been better than Christopher Lambert in this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for me, if I had to pick one, I would pick Gordon Liu. Like because of what you're mentioning and Kill Bill and his role in that and how he had like, and it would have been more authentic to the character of Raiden, who is portrayed as an Asian character in the games and stuff. So, yeah, I think Gordon Liu would have nailed it, and I think that he would have brought the appropriate interpretation to the role, and it would have felt less like we cast this person so that you would have one person on the poster that you can identify with and like can be like, oh, they're in it, so it's good. And one of the things that I was gonna say, rewatching the movie, that I liked about it is that he's the biggest name, and the rest of them were kind of just not big actors, so it's not distracting in the way that when we were doing the alternative casting, if Tom Cruise was Johnny Cage, that would have been distracting. You would have been like, this is a Tom Cruise movie. Or
Yeah.
this is a Danny Glover movie. And I think that Christopher Lambert kind of becomes that. And the only reason he's not that fully is because he's in so little of it. Like they sprinkle him in as opposed to he's consistently like in long, drawn out scenes. But yeah, Gordon Liu, I would like to see that. Now
Yeah.
I'm picturing him in those scenes, and it works. It works really good in my head.
There was a wonderful analogy done on the Anaconda episode that we did not that long ago, and it was the concept of the shoes being too big for the role, right? And let's be honest, the star of this film is not any of the people actually in it. The star is the frickin' Mortal Kombat game, right? Like people are going to see this because they like to play Mortal Kombat. They're not going there for deep analysis of the hierarchy, in martial arts. You're going to see kicky punch. That's about it. That's what you paid your money to go see. Kicky punch. But I have to say though, if this film with this casting comes out today, this film is getting called out for casting someone like Christopher Lambert in the role of Raiden. You're right. It should have been someone like a Gordon Liu, and they would have been dragged across social media for that kind of casting today.
Absolutely. And those are the moments where it's so of its time that you can see where it would break down today. The casting of Christopher Lambert as Raiden, the bimbification or damselification of Sonya Blade, a beloved character in this franchise. Yeah, it would have been raked over the coals on social media for at least those two choices in particular.
Yeah. Also, I have to bring this out, and I don't mean to piss all over Christopher Lambert here as Raiden, but this is more about the writing. Princess Kitana is played by Talisa Soto. Her character is 10,000 years old, right? Yes. What the hell use is Raiden? Like, she clearly has all the information that they need. Who needs, crazy white guy here with the hat and the Captain Sparkle fingers?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Again, that's a question I've never thought to ask, because in the video games, Raiden's always there. But in the narrative that the movie tells us, like, Kitana arguably helps Liu Kang more than Raiden ever directly does in the Sub-Zero fight scene.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about Talisa Soto here. Since we're talking about Princess Kitana, I have to point this out, right? For the person who's supposed to have all this knowledge and be 10,000 years old and whatever the case, right? And just shows up like a who the f is this girl kind of meme kind of thing. Like all of a sudden, like she's there and we don't know why. And she's not really fighting that well and for whatever reason. But you get to the end fight scene. And by the way, again, we mentioned this film, 28 years old. So if you haven't seen it, you're welcome. But the film is, yeah, if you're this far already, the film is spoiled. I'm just going to say it. But you get to the end fight scene. Actually, I don't think we've spoiled it too much, but
no, we've alluded to fights.
Yeah, exactly.
But we get to the end fight scene.
There's punches, there's kicks, and there's bad dialogue. There, you're welcome. But with Talisa Soto, right, and the end fight scene, which is basically between Liu Kang and Shang Tsung, does it feel like she's basically there as a color commentator as opposed to someone who's actually, what's the word, useful?
Yes, absolutely. Her character feels so superfluous to the main plot. And I read that there was originally supposed to be like a romantic connection between her and Liu Kang, which eventually comes in the games. But again, I feel like that's the kind of character that nowadays doesn't fly, because people would be like, well, she's just there so that the audience have another pretty girl. Like, if she's this knowledgeable and smart and strong, why is she not doing more? Because throughout the movie, besides the little bits of dialogue and like leading Liu Kang in certain like directions or whatever, she doesn't really do much. Unfortunately, they use her more in Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Again, I don't know if that's a positive or a detriment to that movie, but yeah, she feels like she's announcing the fight and kind of setting the stakes, like expositional dialogue. She's like the little dialogue box that comes before you kick punch,
Yep.
and she takes that on the chin for us all.
Like I'm just gonna put this out there. Like the dialogue may as well have been Liu Kang is not falling for Shang Tsung's look like his brother Gambit. Well, Bob, going into this game, Kang's coach has been getting him to focus on facing his worst fears. So clearly his practice has paid off. That's the training. Stick to the game plan, put kicks to the face, and take it a thread at a time. Like that's basically what this is. It's every sports cliche.
So you're saying they should have had a cut scene, like a picture in picture where she's there with Raiden. She's like, so how did you prepare Liu Kang for this fight? It's like, well, I got a picture of his brother and just said, Liu, help me, like 100 times so that he would know what would happen in this situation.
Yeah, you just need Jason Bateman to sit there and go, oh, it's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see how this plays out.
Great.
Speaking of Shang Tsung, as played by Hiroyuki Tagawa, I do apologize if I mess up these names, but I think I got that one okay, but we'll just go with it here. Dude is chewing the scenery, and I'm kind of here for it.
Oh, he's great. Again, to compare it to the other fighting movie that came out around this time, since we've already brought it up, Street Fighter, he's very much M. Bison, and that actor's name is eluding me right now, but he's a phenomenal actor who played M. Bison in Street Fighter. But they both do this, like, they just act their butts off. Like, they're really giving it. Like, every scene that Shang Tsung is in, he's committing, and he's committing hard. And you can tell that he's loving it. Perfect. Like, no notes, no recast, no notes. He carries every scene he's in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and that's the fun thing, right? It's a video game movie, right? That I think maybe that's what the 2021 reboot got wrong. It's a video game movie. You can be a little silly, right? You can have a little fun with this. By the way, it was Raul Julia who you were thinking of for Street Fighter in what was actually his last ever role before he passed away. So, rest in peace to Raul Julia. But it's true, right? The best superhero movies, and I feel like I need to be clapping back on this one here. The best superhero movies are not the ones with the best heroes. They're the ones with the best villains. And Shang Tsung, for all of his scene chewery, is just soaking it in. He understood the assignment.
Absolutely. And to your point, the best superhero movies have the best villains. Any good superhero movie has a charismatic and just compelling villain. And every time he's on screen, you're in for a treat. So yeah, he nailed the assignment. That's a perfect example of understanding what your role is and playing it to perfection.
I wonder too, because we know that Shang Tsung is working for the Outworld Emperor, and you have to wonder what his motivation is. I'd be curious to read the novelization of this movie to see if there's that kind of backstory, because I would love to know, because he's really fixated on Sonya, and it's not really understood why. But if we knew why, like, is Sonya his reward for working with the Outworld Emperor? I wish I knew a bit more of that backstory, because it just feels like the Psych Out boss fight. Because again, spoilers, at the end, you got the Outworld Emperor who shows up out of completely nowhere. Also, how do you end a movie showing like the big boss, the Outworld Emperor, and not show the fight? You cut to credits.
Yeah. Well, because you have to buy a ticket to Annihilation, Jay. You gotta rock up to the theater 2 years later and get to see that.
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, we have mentioned on this podcast before, movies that called their shot. They basically said, yeah, sequels are coming, it's all good, and then a sequel never came. Here, a sequel came and it sucked ass. Like, I'm not even kidding. If you ever want to watch a bad movie, where everything is so, it doesn't mesh. Like, there's a lot here in the first movie that meshes very well.
Yeah, I think they had the right combination of everything in this movie, and in the second movie, it all kind of fell apart. It's like they tried to bake a cake and follow the same recipe, but they missed some steps and it falls flat. So it's a real Casey at the bat situation. They
Yeah.
called their shot, and that's good.
If you're comparing Mortal Kombat movies with recipes, then clearly Mortal Kombat Annihilation substituted the baking soda for anthrax. That's kind of what it boiled down to. We don't need to talk too long about this guy because he was barely there. We hardly knew ye. Kenneth Edwards, who played Art Lean. This is the guy that Goro killed, and we're supposed to somehow feel bad for him because we were supposed to feel something for the character. Like, if
He gets a really major death for a character that we spend a total of 2 minutes with, I think, before that.
yeah, like
If that.
if you're going to kill someone to motivate the main characters, make me give a damn about the person you're going to kill. This isn't that hard. This is like screenwriting 101. Don't just kill someone for, death's sake. Like, oh
Yeah, it felt very lazy. And again, it felt just like, well, this is what's going to inspire Johnny Cage in his fight against Goro. And it's
like why?
just because they said, oh, I know you because I watched you fight. Oh, I've watched your movies. Like, that's it. That's supposed to show a long-standing friendship and care. That was it.
Well, for Johnny Cage, liking his movies, that might have been just enough to motivate him anyways.
So that's all I needed to hear is my best friend. That's the first time I've heard that all day.
Exactly. Oh, you like me. Okay, now I'm going to go punch Goro in the dick. But speaking
That
of
might
Goro...
be the most accurate depiction of a Hollywood actor ever, though, to be fair.
No wonder they wanted Tom Cruise to play the role.
Yeah, there you go.
But let's talk about Goro for a second here. Full-on animatronic Goro. And, apparently it took 13 to 16 people to work him, and it didn't really work all that well. But when you're watching this, would you have rathered more animatronics, or would you have rather they had tried to CGI Goro?
I feel like CGI just of that era would not have held up. Like, already some of the CGI looks questionable, to put it lightly. I feel like they had to just try more on the animatronics. Again, for 1995, I think Goro looks fine, and I'm sure it was a hassle to get him to move, and they were very limited. But if there's one thing that art provided us, Goro looks intimidating when he kills him. Goro gets his little scenes of I'm very strong and I have 4 arms, which make him seem like a threat. So I think maybe more animatronics as opposed to more CGI would have been my go-to, but that's just my perspective of it all.
But there's the thing, right? You mentioned that Art Lean, is reacting to him. There's genuine, reaction to this animatronic Goro, who does actually look pretty good. I'll give full credit to the animatronic team. I recognize, they had a Jaws moment where the shark doesn't quite work, and they couldn't bring the animatronic to Thailand where they were shooting, so they had to basically create a soundstage in LA or something like that. But there's the thing. Practical effects will always elicit the better reaction from the actor, right? Rather than, here's a marker, here's a tennis ball, react to the tennis ball, it's a big monster, ooh, you're scared, right?
Yeah, it's hard because even if it's fake and it's animatronic, it's impressive to see something that the mind can't really wrap its brain around move, even if it's not quote unquote real, and at least you can play off of what its movement is. If you're just watching oh, don't worry, we're gonna cut this in later, but trust us, he's squeezing you so hard and it really hurts. It's hard to fake that genuine reaction.
Yeah. I mean, it's even with set design. And I mentioned that for a reason here. When you take a look at, movies in the early and mid 2000s and 2010s and whatnot, there's a lot of blue screen and green screen sets that are being, made around them. And kudos to the actors for truly believing the world that they're in, kind of thing. But now you're seeing these big circular psychs that the set and the scenery around them, they can see where they are, and you're getting actual natural lighting effects on their faces because it's a big giant digital psych wall. the reality of their surroundings helps influence the acting. That being said, the sets in this movie are actually really well done. Like, it looks good, especially when you compare it to Annihilation, but it looks really good.
Oh, I think they nailed the set design a lot. Again, as much that's what I think that this movie should get lauded for. It's stuff like the animatronics, stuff like Shang Tsung's performance, stuff like the set. It feels like you're in this island that doesn't exist anywhere, and the scenes inside and outside, they all look great, and it feels like you're in a real place. So yeah, kudos to the set team, kudos to everybody who was working on the location and everything, because it made it feel real. Like, it made it feel like you were in the Mortal Kombat. So like I have nothing but positive things to say about the set.
Yeah,
Every part of it.
I mean, we've talked on the show before, on episodes like Masters of the Universe, where, yeah, it's camp as hell, right? And especially Flash Gordon. Like, I love the 1980 Flash Gordon film. And those sets are pristine. Like, Ming's palace, Ming's throne room is just, it is a glorious set. And, I don't think set designers get as much of the accolades as they should. Even with Legend, there was a few episodes back, the sets were wonderful and practical, and it allowed the actors to immerse themselves into this. But now we need to talk about the real star of this movie. The real star.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But before we do, I'm going to pop on over to Twitter here. Our good friend Simon Bennett at Sports Voice Guy chimed in with, the soundtrack is next level. Says the guy who listened to nothing but techno in high school. Also watched it in the theater. It was like Marvel on opening night. People were cheering for their favorite characters from the game. Scorpio got a huge pop. The soundtrack. This is one of the most iconic 1990s soundtracks ever. And this is in a decade where you have soundtracks like The Crow and Singles and Reality Bites. There are some phenomenal soundtracks in 1995. And this one went through a little bit because, of course, they went to Sony and they went to Virgin and they got turned down because the labels wanted them to use bands like Van Halen and Janet Jackson. So they went to TVT Records. And if you don't know TVT Records, we're talking about the home of like Nine Inch Nails. Like, because they wanted an electronic sounding soundtrack. And this soundtrack slays.
Oh, it crushes. Again, the Mortal Kombat theme, if you were alive in the 90s, whenever that comes on, you're yelling Mortal Kombat and you're pantomiming a karate move, or you're jumping in the air and doing a kick. Like, the test your mind. Oh, it's so good, and it makes you want to fight. Like, I'm not a very violent person, but when I hear this, I have it on my gym playlist, for Christ's sake. Like, I'm always like, yes, let's go. I'm ready. Let me kick, punch. How do you do the freeze ball again? Like, down, right, B. I'm just.
But the thing is, there's some bands on this soundtrack that, in 1995, some of them were bigger, right? Some of them were getting a lot of attention, but some of them were a little under the radar. Like, there's a band on here called Gravity Kills, and I swear by them back in the day. Like, I had one of their albums back then, and it is phenomenal. Like, if you're looking for that industrial vibe, you've got KMFDM is in there. You had it didn't make the CD because, these songs had already appeared on their Ungod CD, but Stabbing Westward. Oh my freaking God, I love Stabbing Westward. Like, I'm looking forward to the day when I do Stabbing Westward on There Can Only Be One. Also, you can follow There Can Only Be One at Only One Cast. Cheap pop, here we go. But this soundtrack, the fact that it peaked at number 10 on the Billboard 200 and won the BMI Film Music Award, like the composer got the award for that. Like, they killed the music, and they knew. In the 90s, you had to have a good soundtrack. This soundtrack, I think, is really the star of the film.
Yeah, I think all of the fight scenes, the songs that are underneath them, and it nails the vibe and nails the feeling. Like, I shudder to think of the soundtrack where you just have to shoehorn Tina Turner saying finish them. All respect to Tina Turner. She's a legend, but I don't need to hear her say flawless victory in a song. I don't think it would work.
Now, I mean, that being said, you have to remember that Tina Turner, of course, did, she was in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, but of course she did the soundtrack Beyond Thunderdome, and like, that's a great song. Kudos to Tina Turner for that one. It wouldn't work for here, but we got Tracy Lord, so we got an actress of a different kind.
Exactly.
Exactly, right? Before we move on, though, from this, okay, and before we get to our MVP, Twitter has also spoken as well. Our good friend Greg over at Movie Date Night. Regardless of the acting and special effects, this is by far the most canonical, faithful video game film adaptation. It briefly goes through every fighter's backstory, sets up the tournament, and has several 1v1 fights and showcases unique character moves and fatalities. And he's not wrong.
Yeah, I will bang the drum for this movie for everybody who loves it. I think it's a very faithful adaptation. The liberties it takes are in service of a story. It's up to you to decide whether those liberties are earned or not, but it provides a backstory and a motivation for every character. Johnny Cage wants to prove himself, thinks people don't take him seriously. Sonya Blade wants to avenge the death of her partner. Raiden's the protector of Earthrealm. The two characters that does the least to set up, I guess, in a way that would feel faithful to the cast is Sub-Zero and Scorpion, but they look cool and they do the special moves. So I think that's what made me a fan of this. Like, when I was a kid, I didn't care about dialogue. Punch, punch, kick. Sub-Zero freezes a guy and he explodes. Cool. Scorpion shoots a snake rope out of his hand. Awesome. Johnny Cage, like we said, punches a dude in the nuts. Incredible. And Liu Kang throws a fireball. If you were going to write a Mortal Kombat movie, those things have to happen. And they nailed it on that front.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you take a look at some of the video game movies that came out around that time. Looking at you, Super Mario Brothers. Sorry, Bob Hoskins. But and Street Fighter and Wing Commander, and Double Dragon, there were some horrendous video game adaptations that came out in the 90s, and I think Mortal Kombat does get kind of unfairly lumped in with them. They put a lot into this. People clearly appreciate it with the fact that it's a $122 million global box office. They knew what they had to do and they did it well. But before we get to our MVP, there's one last thing I have to bring up here. Anytime you say Mortal Kombat, you know what you have to do. Mortal Kombat!
Hey! Dun, 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 dun. Like that every time.
Okay, I'm glad you said every time, because there can be a touch much. So I did a count.
Oh, did you?
I did a count of how many times you hear dudes scream Mortal Kombat. Now, I didn't count every time someone said Mortal Kombat, right? Because that would just be way too much, right?
I said they did a good job of shoehorning it in.
Oh, yeah. There were so many roll credits moments in this film that yeah. But I counted the number of times we had the Mortal Kombat. 17.
Really?
17
wow, that feels high
times.
To me.
There were 3 instances of it in the first minute. 3 times in the first minute of the film before we see a person. 3 times. 17 in total. 11 during the credits.
They really wanted to drill home that it was Mortal Kombat.
And that's I watched every credit in this film counting Mortal Kombats 11 times. They had a quota to fill.
Yeah, the studio must have been like, look, you have to contractually, we have to, for NetherRealm Studios, they want it at least 17 times. So if you're not there yet, please make the credits extra long and get them to just yell. At random intervals.
Yeah. Honestly, it was getting to the point where I was having Stockholm Syndrome, and I just expected that was going to end up being my ringtone because I'd accepted the chaos at that point 17 times with the Mortal Kombat here. Okay, Ruben.
Mortal Kombat.
18. Plus the 2 that I did, so 20. Okay.
An even number. There we go. We're good.
Exactly. Okay, it is now time. So, Ruben, who is your MVP of Mortal Kombat?
Well, when it comes to Mortal Kombat, I think there's a lot of MVPs, but I have to go with Shang Tsung. Like I think that the actor Kerry Tagawa did such a great job, and like we said, chewed the scenery, committed to the role, and every scene he's in is made better by his presence. And if that's not an MVP, I don't know who is. This movie can hang its hat on. The villain plays a great villain, and for any video game or superhero adaptation, I think that's important.
Oh, I mean, he didn't just have a meal with that role. He had a buffet with that role.
Oh, he enjoyed every course. He was like, just sat there chewing it.
Exactly. But he's not my MVP. I wanted to give a shout out to the set designers, though, because they were almost my MVP, because they did. They made a phenomenal job, and the location directors, like it looks great. You know, bad CGI aside, but the shooting locations, the set design, it all looks great. But we cannot end the show without, singing the praises of Captain Quip himself, Johnny Cage, as played by Lyndon Ashby.
I'm so happy you said him, because that was my second choice.
But I mean, here's the thing: when you have, and Marvel has proven this time and time again. If you have an action movie, it needs to have a little bit of levity. And sometimes it's that levity that helps, create not a monotonous tone to the movie. But the thing is, Lyndon Ashby's Johnny Cage isn't just there to chew bubblegum and make jokes. He's got the bubblegum, he's got the ass kicking and the cock punching, but it's a complete package. He's an effective part of the trio and does the job well.
Again, I think you nailed it. He does his job well, and as the trio, he breaks up the constant feeling. Like, again, it's a silly movie. It's supposed to be fun. It's a video game movie. And while in the universe that it takes place in, this is super high stakes, it's a tournament for the fate of the world. It's nice that he's making jokes. He's asking Liu Kang to put his luggage in. It gets thrown in the water. He wants to call his agent. He does it all very well. Like, he's not Sonya Blade's travel agent. Those things give you a little chuckle and make you be like, all right, I'm on board. I want to keep watching this movie. I like what's happening. It's fun. So yeah, he kills it.
And that's the thing. Johnny Cage seems like the kind of character that in the face of, world destroying danger, that might be his coping mechanism. It creates a reality for it. And the jokes aren't bad. He's actually pretty good comedic relief. I mean, there are some lines where you sit there and go, you read what was on the paper. You should not have read what was on the paper. You would have come up with something much better.
Yeah, he was just tired. He's like, I've done too many of my own quips. What's it say here? Sure. Why not? We'll go with that.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, words. Okay. Ruben, thank you so much for this. Now, you actually have a bunch of music on Spotify out there, so let us know what you got going on, where we can hear it, and where we can find you out there on the interwebs.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me on, and thank you for letting me talk about Mortal Kombat, which at this point is my religion. I'm on Twitter at Ray_Chavo. There you have all my links, but it takes you to my Spotify, Apple Music. I have music on Spotify under the name Ray Chavo. There's an EP there that's called My Heart and My Dreams in Spanish, so just look for my name. It's easier for everybody out there that doesn't speak Spanish. And it's also on Apple Music. You can find me on Instagram, again, RayChavo13 there, and I make music. I talk about movies sometimes on podcasts when they let me, and I like to entertain people in all different ways. So if you follow me, I'll try to make you laugh, smile, or at least question my sanity for watching Mortal Kombat for the 50th time.
Now, are we going to get the Spanish version of the Mortal Kombat theme song?
I feel like I have to now.
Yeah.
Because now it's just stuck in my head, so I have to do it. Mortal Kombat in Spanish. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it.
Well,
yeah, so look out for that. I'll share that on my Spotify soon. I'll hook up with the soundtrack.
I'm gonna tell you, if you ever do it, you have to drop it, and then you need to come back on the show, and we'll cover Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I'm sorry.
Okay. I think that one will be so quick. Who's the MVP? Literally no one. The MVP is the credits because the movie is done.
Clearly, you knew the assignment as well. Ruben, thank you so much for this. And dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of It's Not That Bad. Now, you guys know the drill. If there is a movie out there that you think is unfairly maligned, or you think is so bad that there isn't a chance in Mortal Kombat hell that we can find anything good to say about it, hit us up on Twitter at NotThatBadcast, or go to our website, notthatbadcast.com. Let us know, and we will watch it, we will dissect it, and we will find the good things to say, because we are looking for those A grades in B movies. Until next time, Ruben, thank you so much. My name is Jay. Listeners, you guys are all awesome. Take care, everyone.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, Skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.